Hey guys, Jami here. I'm here with Elya, who is a business owner, entrepreneur, Spoonie, and I'm so excited to chat with her today about all things entrepreneurship, business ownership, living with a chronic condition. She's also a mom. How are you, Elya? Welcome to the podcast.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited.
So glad to have you. I wanted to tell everyone the story about how we met because I think it's actually hilarious. So, I have a high school friend that is named Corra, and you run an Instagram called Corra.Health.
Mhm.
Which Corra is not your name anyway. Your name
Yep.
is Elya. So my mom was actually telling me about your Instagram, and she was saying, yeah, Corra from your friend started this Instagram profile to help chronic illness, people in the chronic illness community, because she also had a chronic condition as well. So it wasn't too far off of like
Sure, sure.
um the possibility. And so then she sent me the Instagram profile, and I was like, I had a look, but there aren't that many photos of you on it. So I was like,
Yeah.
I was like, oh yeah, that's her. And then I messaged you and I was like, hi Corra. I didn't realize it was you. How are you? Like, let's get you on the phone.
Yeah, I get that. I get that message. It's you. And I just like messaged my marketer. I was like, do we get responses like that a lot? I'm new to Instagram. I like the whole thing's new to me. I was like, it's me. Like, hi. Anyway, it turned out to work out really well because now you and I
Yes.
met.
Yeah, so we met anyway.
Yeah.
And you were still nice because you weren't
Oh,
like, oh my
thank you.
gosh.
I'm glad. I'd like to think I'm nice. So
You were like, yeah, hi, yeah, let's catch up.
yeah.
And it didn't wasn't until later when I had a better look at your profile and then scrolled down a while to find some photos of you. I was like, that's not Corra at all. And I called my mom and I was like, Mom, like this is the wrong person. Anyway, but then it led to this. So
And it
I
all
love that.
worked out, right? We're like, wow, this person really like fits exactly kind of the mission we're trying to go for. And we're like, wow, this like clandestine. Like how amazing is this if this person's
Yeah.
reaching out to us, you know? So
Well, that's exactly what my mom said when she told me about your profile. Is she was like, you they're doing such similar things, you should connect. And I think I was asking her about like how she heard of you, and I think it was through maybe an ad that you had done on Instagram. So anyway, it was great connection. And thanks for coming on the podcast. So first segment
yeah.
is always the pet peeve. So tell me about your pet peeve.
Oh, oh man. So I've been like thinking about this one like over and over and over and it's like I don't really have like a specific pet peeve that like really gets me, you know. It's more like I get really like I'll get really hot and like irritated about just like general like lack of consideration. Like I don't know,
Yeah.
like and it can come in like a lot of different forms, but you know when like someone just does something and you're like, what did you
Yep.
think about? Like I don't
Did
know,
you?
like that like really gets me. My
Yeah.
husband always has to like calm me down, like don't worry, they weren't thinking, like it's not a big deal or whatever. And like it every time I'll be like, it just didn't think, like I don't know. So like I know it's really general. I could give some examples, but I
Yeah.
get just like just lack of consideration and like little things, you know, like not like big things. So obviously that's important too, but just like the like little things where you're just like, you know,
Mm,
like I
yeah.
don't know. It could be like as simple as like someone not picking up their dog's poop. Like you watch them like walk by and you're like, but why? You know,
Yeah.
like that's such a anyway, little things like
It's
that I think would
basic.
probably be my biggest pet peeve.
I think
Yeah.
that's interesting that you bring that up because I actually wonder and think my kind of view on this is that people in the chronic illness community, because we have struggled so much and dealt with such big health challenges, I kind of, at least for me, I definitely developed more of a consideration for other people and what they're going through. I don't know if you kind of relate with that, but
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and maybe it just like things. Well, one, I mean, like as you know, like if you're in the middle of a flare or you're in a lot of pain or something, like I think your tolerance for things goes down a little bit. Like I know my patience will kind of
yep.
like the more pain I'm in, the less patience I have for things or the less forgiving I feel, you know, where it's like something small where it's like, you know, I'm trying to get to point A to point B, or I'm like trying to get myself home or something like that because, you know, I know I have a flare coming or something like that. And having like these inconsiderate moments, I think will just stand out to me more, where I'm like, I don't know. I definitely think it has come across, and I mean, like, I'm sure I do it too. Like I'm inconsiderate to others, and I have my
Yeah, we
moments,
all have.
obviously. But yeah, but I think that's right. I think maybe it helps drive a little bit of compassion, or like bring out compassion, because you kind of suddenly have eyes for like, oh, I don't know what that person's going through, or, you know, like there could be things there that we can't see, you know, like talking about like invisible illnesses and stuff like that. So yeah, I think that's a good point for that.
Yeah, and even
Definitely.
also just kind of having a voice and standing up for yourself is something
Yeah.
I'm learning, because like I've shared with the community, I've had an ankle issue for almost a year now, and I haven't been able to walk properly for a year. So I can walk like maybe like 5 minutes, but if I walk longer than that, my ankle starts hurting. And I'm working on it. I've seen all the people and all the things, but like people will be like, message me and be like, oh, let's go for a walk, and I'm just like, I haven't been able to walk for a year. Like,
Yeah.
so
That's so frustrating.
I think they forget. And then
Yeah.
I then have to say, I can't walk. Can we do something where I don't have to walk? And that's uncomfortable for me, but it is what
Yeah.
it is.
Yeah. No, and I mean, I've done that too, where I have a friend who had a feeding tube, was on a really strict diet and things like that, and we were out, we were actually at the same training together to become handlers for our service dogs, where they were releasing our service dogs to us, and that's where we met. And you know, we would have breaks around lunchtime and stuff. I'd be like, hey, do you want to go out to eat? And he'd always come with me, but then I'd forget that like he couldn't eat a lot of things, and I feel so
Yeah.
bad, where I was like, I should have thought of something else we could have done, because this isn't really an activity that he could participate in, you know? So I don't know. I definitely, things like that, where it's just like, when it's not something that you deal with, sometimes it's really hard to like remember, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So speaking of kind of your health issues and stuff, what conditions do you actually have?
So I have been diagnosed with Ehlers-Danlos syndrome,
Yeah.
specifically hypermobility, so HEDS, and POTS, postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome.
Okay.
I also have been diagnosed with fibromyalgia, but I'm not sure that one's accurate. That one for me is kind of up for debate. The geneticist I saw who diagnosed my Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, my rheumatologist, all my other doctors didn't know. I had a nurse practitioner originally who was like, you have Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. She ran me through all the clinical tests, because for hypermobility, for HEDS, there's actually no genetic test. There's no typing for that they can find.
Yeah.
Some of the EDS types, there are genetic tests, and others there aren't. So for HEDS, they have to run you through a bunch of clinical tests. And a nurse practitioner actually identified it and diagnosed it, and was really helping me through it, because it got to the point where I was really losing a lot of mobility. I was in pain every day. I was really losing my ability to function in a lot of ways, and we weren't really sure how to mitigate a lot of that. And but my doctors didn't really take that diagnosis seriously.
Okay.
Maybe because a nurse practitioner gave it to me, not a doctor. But for whatever reason, I was sent back and forth like a whole nightmare train for years, whereas like a rheumatologist sent me to a geneticist to say that they had to diagnose it, and they'd be like, oh, there's no genetic test for this, a rheumatologist has to diagnose it. And they sent me back and forth between rheumatologists and geneticists. I even had one rheumatologist dislocate my shoulder, trying to show me how my shoulder wouldn't dislocate. It was
What?
just like yeah, he was like,
Oh my
look,
gosh.
sweetie, like your shoulder doesn't dislocate. If it did, then when I went like this, and there it went, and he went pale as a ghost, and I was like, yeah, like
I can't even.
I'm not, like,
I'm
what?
literally like in shock right now.
Like, why
If
aren't
people
you
can
listening?
see my face, I'm like mouth wide open.
Yeah,
That is terrible.
it was a fun experience. Anyway, I didn't see him again, to be
No.
clear. And finally, after so my rheumatologist, I found one I really liked, and she still didn't know much about EDS, so she wasn't really comfortable putting that on my chart. And so at this point I have a diagnosis from a nurse practitioner, but it's not really accepted by my doctors. And then finally I got referred to a geneticist who specializes in connective tissue disorders. And he ran me through all these tests and was like, you absolutely have this. There's no doubt in my mind. Like this is so obvious to me. I can't believe no one else has diagnosed it yet. Like there are things in place to tell doctors how to diagnose this. Anyway, so he diagnosed me with it. And by this time I'd been aware of it for a few years, you know, like this seemed reasonable. I fit all the symptoms and whatever. And he said that about 70% of the EDS patients he sees are misdiagnosed with fibromyalgia before they get their actual diagnosis. They mimic, like a lot of EDS symptoms include fibro symptoms. Anyway, and then I went back to my doctors and was like, oh, hey, I saw the geneticist that you guys wanted me to see. And, you know, here's what he said. And he like sent them his results. And I remember them coming in and being like, oh my gosh, like, how are you doing? Like, do you want us to set you up with a counselor? I mean, this is such an intense diagnosis. It's like, I've known about this for a while. Like, this isn't news to me, you know, like.
You're like, first of all, I've had it for years.
Yeah, right. Like
I've known about it for years. I was just waiting for you to figure it out.
Exactly. I was like, this was diagnosed. You just didn't take it seriously because it was a nurse practitioner who diagnosed it. And anyway, so I'd like been learning to manage it for years and had fully kind of adjusted to it mentally. And, you know, we were in a good swing and my doctors were just like, what? Like, oh my gosh. I was like, yeah. Like, anyway, so after that, actually, my medical care improved a lot. They, something about having an actual diagnosis, one, I think validates the person because then you don't feel crazy, you know, where you're like, what's wrong with me? You know, like this is my experience, but no one else seems to be able to identify it or tell me why I'm experiencing this. And then also it just, my doctors started kind of taking me seriously, which honestly kind of breaks my heart for patients with fibromyalgia. I didn't have like my condition didn't change, right? Like my experience, my pain, my daily life, none of that changed. The only thing that changed is that 1 minute they believed it only to be fibromyalgia and the next they believed it to be Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. Again, my experience is the same. The only difference is how they treated it or how they how my medical care was, right? And so for me, I was like, it really kind of broke my heart for people who have fibromyalgia, which is, you know, I have friends who have it, which is so painful and it's something that they have to deal with every day. And it's like how much harder they may have to fight for that same level of medical care. You know what I mean? Anyway, I know that's not everyone's, that's not the case for everyone and every doctor is different, but that was just my personal experience with that journey. So.
Yeah. Wow. That's full on.
Yeah.
So have you seen a significant amount of improvement with your symptoms since
I have mainly just this last year and a half. My health has been deteriorating for over a decade now. About 12 years it's kind of been going downhill. And when my husband and I first got married, we didn't realize it was like a incurable condition I had. We thought it was just from a boating accident I had been in. I was just a slow healer for some reason, and we couldn't figure out. It's like we had all the puzzle pieces, but we couldn't put the puzzle together yet.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until, so I was getting a lot worse and we hadn't figured out the best way to help me. I tried pretty much every nutrition regimen out there. I was seeing doctors more than I was seeing friends or people. I mean, now we don't see anyone because of COVID, but you know, and then the first turning point was when I got my service dog. When she came home to me, she was an absolute life changer. So she came home to me last year, 2019 in the spring, and she radically changed my life and helped me start improving. And then after that, I really got on a great nutrition plan. You know, I've been working with my dietitian, and she's been incredible. And that plus a few other doctors, we kind of all work together to really tailor my medication with my supplements, with my nutrition, with my exercise, and all of that combined. This year, especially, I'm currently the healthiest I've been in as long as I can remember. I'm doing the best I have done in a very, very long time. So it's really encouraging.
That's awesome. I feel like we could
Yeah.
do a whole nother episode about you telling us about your service dog.
Yeah, I'd
Because
love to talk.
that sounds like a big topic. Because
Yes, definitely.
I'd love to ask you about it, but I really actually want to hear about your
That would take
business.
us off topic, right?
It would take us off topic, but let's have you back to talk about it
Yeah.
because that actually could be super helpful for the community.
Yeah,
What
absolutely.
I want to get you on to talk about is business and being an entrepreneur, a Spoonie entrepreneur. I talked about this a little bit with Steph in a podcast interview I did a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, I saw that.
He is a freelance writer, and we talked a little bit about being ambitious and being a Spoonie and what it's like to, I guess, continue to move forward in your career and studies, et cetera, even with a condition or not, whichever kind of suits your what you're going through at the time. So you mentioned that you have started 5 businesses.
Yes.
My guess is it's all in the last 12 years when you've been unwell is
Yeah.
and that's crazy to me. That's amazing. I aspire to that. And also, so I guess my question for you is how do you entrepreneur business culture, it's hustle. Like I'm in it. It's hustle. It's 24/7. It's you should be spending 14 hours a day in the office. How do you manage building businesses as a Spoonie in hustle culture?
I think the biggest thing you can do is learn to delegate and
Yeah.
have people you can delegate to. I think is the most important thing. Right in when you're dealing with health issues on top of everything. Now, when I started my first business, it it I my health was just starting to get worse, right? Like it had been kind of like not great for a long time, but there was definitely a point where it took a huge downward turn, right? And that's when things started getting really difficult. So that happened about 5.5 years ago, right? Is when I started getting really bad. And at that time, the first business, other than I did a couple multi-level marketings in high school and started that, I've just always kind of had a business mind. But the first business I started was actually a tutoring center, a local tutoring center. And I've always had a passion for teaching. I love math. I love working with kids. I had nannied and homeschooled a couple different families and worked with that. And it was just a huge passion of mine. So I started this tutoring center and it was very quickly growing. I think the community really appreciated kind of the reason behind what we did, right? The why, if you will, the meaning, of not wanting any kids to be left behind or wanting kids not just to like, oh, now I understand math, but also learn that they were capable of overcoming challenges, and that they were capable of more than they thought they were. And that's kind of been throughout all my businesses. That's something that's really important to me. And because it was growing, I started bringing on more and more team members. And I hired a close friend of mine and I hired my sister. They were kind of the first 2 people I brought into the business. And they're just 2 of the hardest workers I've ever met in my entire life. They're so dedicated and passionate to their work. And I think finding people that share your mission and share your goal, something my husband loves to say is no one will care about your business as much as you do. So you have to find people who will care about it almost as much as you do, who are dedicated to the business. And I did that by one, I think having a business that they could believe in, that fit their goals. And then also I did my best to make sure that I paid them a generous wage that was well above minimum wage and above what they could make in competing markets, because I wanted them to be paid what their time was worth. And also because I knew that there were going to be days I was sick and I needed them to be committed to the job, so that if I couldn't be there, I could count on them,
Yeah.
And I really believe that saying, you get what you pay for kind of thing. So not only were they just phenomenal people, was I really blessed to find just a phenomenal team that came in and worked with me. But I also did what I could on my end to try to incentivize them to want to be there and make it as much a family environment as I could. And
Yeah.
so what that did is, on days when as I got sicker and sicker, I asked my friend, I ended up asking her if she would become the manager, if she would really take over. And she did. And she worked harder than anyone I've ever met. And people loved her and adored her. And it was someone I could delegate to because, one, I trusted her, and I knew she was a hard worker, and I knew she cared about the business. And all of these things, I think, work together. So I think it's a lot of different, like, start the team right in the beginning, right?
Yeah.
All it takes is kind of one bad apple or one poisonous seed to really ruin the entire team environment. So we would bring people in, and I had rules about my three work rules that if you broke them one time, I would fire you, and I would. Was you can't ever be late, right? I mean, these kids are counting on you. You can't be late.
Yeah.
If it's 1 or 2 minutes, don't be late. Don't ever gossip about your fellow team members, students, anyone. Like, we do not gossip, and always tell the truth. So, like, if you screw up and I ask you about it, or even if I don't, you need to tell me. You need to be honest about that, and honest to their fellow teammates. And I think by making sure we had an environment where there was no gossip, where everyone was honest, where, like, someone would screw up and they knew they could tell me that they screwed up, and we would talk about it, find a solution, and they weren't going to just be like, oh, you're out the door, I think that really fostered a healthy environment to allow me to not be as present as maybe another boss would need to be, because I, like you said,
and it sounds like as well, it's a relationship based on trust and mutual understanding of a common goal, similar values in what they want in a career. Because there's a lot to, like, learning to delegate. And I've had to learn that as well. As I've had a lot of volunteers that work with Chronic Hope. And I've even worked with volunteers as a leader in other capacities outside of Chronic Hope. And it can be challenging. I mean, it can be challenging working with a team, whether you're leading the team or in the team. Working with people is always a challenge.
Yeah.
Because there's so many competing mindsets and all of that. But it's interesting what you say about just being really clear about communications and rules, and what you're saying about values as well. Because that's one thing that I've done with Chronic Hope, is that we have 4 very distinctive values. Communication is one of them. Honesty, integrity is another. Diversity, and all of these things that they set the tone for how we're going to be as a team, who we are as an organization, and how I want the team to feel while they're working for us. And then this is probably similar to what you did, is when you take on a team member, having that conversation and making sure that the values are aligned, and that what they want in terms of your purpose in the company or organization is the same. I don't know if you've kind of experienced that.
Yeah, exactly. No, I mean, that's huge,
Yeah, and I think what you make a really good point, because this is something that I had to learn early on with the journey with Chronic Hope, is the delegation. Is that I need to, and also setting up the business, at least for me, or organization, in a way that if I couldn't do something, it was someone else could do it, or it didn't get done, and it wasn't a big deal. Because that's what happens when you have health issues, is like some days you actually can't get out of bed, you can't do things. And obviously for you, that wasn't an option to not tutor the students. So you got the right team to do it, which is awesome.
And that's honestly how it started. Is I started feeling sick, and I asked my sister, I was like, hey, can you assist me? Because we did tutoring in art classes. And I was like, hey, could you assist me in this art class? When it started, we started it at my house, and then I ended up moving it to an actual storefront. And she's like, yeah, I can assist you. And then it was like 2 weeks later when my health was getting worse, and I was like, actually, could you just run it? Like,
yeah,
here you go. And that definitely, she talks to me about this all the time. She's like, you throw people in the deep end. You're like, hey, so you're in charge now. And yeah, they definitely give me a lot of flack for that. But
that's,
I mean,
sisters.
I think exactly. Yeah, you did. I do it to everyone, I think, but definitely to my sister, where it's like, I see that you're capable of this. Here you go. And they're like, wait, I wasn't prepared for that. I'm like, nah, you'll be fine. You got this. I believe in you.
Exactly. And then they do great. And you're like, I told you.
Yeah, like, and they always do an amazing job. So
Yeah.
yeah, no, and that's huge. And I love what you were just saying about your kind of what chronic hope is built on. I think those are such important foundations, you know. And when you have foundations like that, you really attract those types of people who kind of have that same mindset, you know, who really want to uh, share that mission with you, you know.
Yeah.
So that's huge.
You,
That gives you the right help.
yeah, I'm very thankful for my team, and has taken me a while to learn because I mean, probably around this time last year, I remember having a conversation with one of my friends, and I said, I need to learn to delegate. I'm at the point where I need to learn to delegate because I knew that I was going to be starting university, I was going to be working part-time, and then I was also going to be running Chronic Cope, and it wasn't going to be manageable unless I learned to delegate. And with that came, like we were saying, you have to set up a clear vision, mission, and values. And then, yes, the operational side is important, but once the team knows the mission, vision, and values, then they can then not only do the operational side, but then improve on it. At least that's
Right.
what I've noticed. Like,
Right. Because when the more diverse the group of people you're with, the more ideas you're going to have, right? Everyone thinks differently. Everyone has unique
totally.
and so if you can get a diverse group of people who can all come together and all have different tasks, then you're going to get people who have thoughts that would just never have occurred to you,
Yeah.
you know, and be like, that's brilliant. Why didn't I even think of that, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So I think, and I honestly believe that there's almost nothing that can't be delegated. Um, the issue is having someone you can delegate it to, having that relationship and that trust, you know, because you can't delegate someone to, you know, manage the books or handle the finances if you can't trust them with your finances and with the
Yeah.
company's best interest, you know. Or you can't delegate someone to manage a schedule if you're not sure if they're going to be organized, or you know what I mean? Like you have to find the right person for each job. But I do believe pretty much everything can be delegated if you find the right person for the job, you know? And
Yeah.
and managing a team on its own is its own task, right? Like even if you're not
Yep.
in the nitty-gritty, you know, finding, you know, delegating things and finding the right people to bring in and creating a family environment is its own job all on its own, you
Yeah.
know? So yeah.
So here's my question with that, because starting a business is obviously super time consuming and there's a lot of pressure. There's a lot of pressure to grow it, financial pressure. It's hustle. It's essentially a hustle. And you've obviously started several businesses while dealing with health issues. Did you have to fight against that mindset, or did it kind of come naturally to you to know that you needed to take a break?
Um it's hit or miss. It depends on which business I was working in, you know. There have been a couple where it's like time based. So for me, Corra, the health app that I'm working on right now, is the most terrifying project I've taken on.
Okay.
Right? Because the rest are more like, you know, I started a tutoring center to help the community. And I helped my husband open his dream gym and kind of did a lot of the legwork, footwork to kind of get it started. And he runs it all now. So that's not a lot of pressure on me, you know. I can't really
Yeah.
say that one's too draining. I do a lot of computer work, admin stuff at home, but I'm not there on my feet during the day, right? He's doing
Yeah.
all that work. And then I started a children's clothing company because I was really frustrated that there were not practical clothes made for my babies and that it was so difficult to dress them. So I was like, I'm
Yeah.
going to fix this. And so I started a children's clothing company, which COVID really kind of messed that one up. But
Hmm.
then I started a business to help other people start businesses. And they were all like small little things where I could take a
Okay.
step back, right? Like the clothing company that I worked with this amazing girl I met. And she and I ended up running it together. You know, I think she also has a chronic illness. So we really understood each other and we would have to remind each other that we needed to take breaks, right? Because there would
Yeah.
be shows we had to go to. And we did this boutique. And at the end of the boutique, I think it was like 3 or 4 days where we didn't even like reach out to each other or talk after it. And then we both kind of like connected. And I was like, I'm so sorry. I meant to like follow up with you the next day and see how you thought the boutique went. But we were both completely thrashed, you know, like I think she and
Yeah.
I both went home and just like slept for days, you know, we're like, we overdid that, you know? And so we were
Yeah.
like, hey, sorry I didn't reach out. Kind of was in a flare. She's like, yeah, me too. Like we both,
Wow.
and we had been like warning each other the whole time, like, okay, we need to make sure we don't cause a flare. We need to make sure we don't injure ourselves. We need to. And then we were so into like working up to this event and like putting on this boutique. And then we were drained, you know, we lost all of our spoons. We went negative.
Yeah.
And I think that does more damage, right? Like there's occasionally events that you really have to borrow spoons and really make it happen, but it costs you, you know. I think
It does. Yeah.
trying to moderate your time, trying to manage your energy and rest when you need to, and just kind of be like, okay, well, that's not going to get done, is more important and probably the better method. I'm not always the best at doing that though. You know, I'm kind of a like, just go until it's done and then completely crash, you know, which is
Yep.
not the healthiest. That's
No,
just
I'm similar.
how
And
yeah.
I even have gotten to the point with everything where, because I like to-do lists and I like to check off everything on my to-do list, except that never happens anymore. It actually just doesn't happen. And what I've realized is that I'm actually always going to have something to do.
Yep.
I've really come to terms with that, especially even in the last couple weeks. Like I finished studies, and obviously when you're studying, you always have things to do. But I was thinking things were going to calm down. And they did. Like I don't have study stress, which is good because study stress is not fun stress.
Yeah.
I'd take work stress over study stress any day.
Absolutely.
But things didn't calm down, and I'm now that it's summer, I'm working full time, and I only have evenings and weekends to work on Chronic Hope, and I'm thankful for my team. I also work on Chronic Hope in the mornings, and I prioritize obviously my job, and I sometimes just don't get things done, and I'm just like, you know what? That's gonna happen in a week's time, and is not ideal, but I need to rest, and that's a priority. I need to be in bed by 10 p.m. Every night. And if things don't get done by 9:30, that's fine. I shut my phone off and do it tomorrow.
I've really been trying to get in a really great night routine, because if I go to bed early, you know, if I like turn the lights off so my body starts adjusting to the dark, and you phone off, and you know, put some candlelight on to operate by candle, you know, no computer, get some tea, go to bed at a decent time, I'm so much healthier the next day. I function so much better. I sleep so much better. I'll like listen to like a sleep like meditation, you know, on an app or something before I go to bed to really help me, because I struggle with insomnia. I do so much better. But my husband comes home pretty late, so he'll get home at like 8 or 9 p.m. And so then I want to like be spending time with him, or we like to play computer games, and I want to play some computer games with him or something. And then next thing I know, it's midnight or 1 a.m. and I'm a total night owl, and then I haven't gone to sleep. And then the next day I'm like exhausted, you know, and it's like I know what my body needs, but actually implementing that new lifestyle, I think changing any lifestyle is so difficult, you know, and sometimes I think that's the case, you know, it's like we know what would help us, but it's so much easier said than done, you know, and that really applies across the board, right? Where it's like, you know what your body needs, and it's a matter of self-discipline on if you're actually going to implement that, like if you're actually, you know, what areas you're going to commit to changing, and what areas you're going to be like, you know what, it's worth it to stay up late because I want to spend time with my husband, or no, for this period of time I need to go to bed earlier, or I'm going to cut out sugar, or I'm going to do these exercises, or I'll commit to this physical therapy, you know, like I'm that person who I either want to change everything at one time, or I'm like, no, I'm not going to do anything, you know? And it's like, I think baby steps are really important, and that's definitely something I'm still working on, you know? So how did you adjust to shutting everything off at 9:30? How did you get in that mode?
Well, I think to me, it's been a journey because when I was starting to recover from chronic fatigue syndrome, I realized that because I'm introverted, and introverted doesn't mean that you're not outgoing and friendly. Right. Introverted just kind of means that in order to really recharge, you have to be alone.
Right.
And I wasn't getting that. So I decided every Sunday I was actually going to turn my phone off for the whole day. And it was really hard at first, but what I realized is it gave my brain space, my mind actually space to wander and
Mhm.
to think about things, just whatever kind of came up. And that can be scary if you have mental health issues because there are times where I don't actually want to be stuck in my head.
Right.
But it's actually been the best practice. And then so I went from that to bringing that into my week because I noticed that once I started setting boundaries around my phone and giving myself space to kind of be away from that was helpful. So I learned what works for me is I also don't watch TV hardly ever. Maybe like once a week, I'll watch like Mandalorian or something from
That's
Disney
huge.
Plus.
Yeah, it's so
But
important.
so I do a lot of reading. So I'm usually in my bed by 9:30. I read for an hour and I'm asleep by 10:30. And then my alarm goes off at 6:30. I wake up, have a coffee and journal for like an hour and then that's when I look at my phone. So I'm spending like 10 probably 10 hours away from my phone
Wow,
during the night.
that's so healthy. uh, I I wish I could say I do that. I've definitely done that a couple days and have seen a huge benefit, but I have not gotten that as a habit in my life. I mean, that's really inspiring to me. I know that that type of lifestyle would help my health a lot, you know. And it's hard to find other people who've implemented it. So hearing that, I mean, it really does
Yeah.
encourage.
I mean, it doesn't always work for everyone. So I'm not going to say that everyone should do this. I know
Right.
for me, it's the best thing because even just the Sundays that I turn my phone off, there's a lot of times like emotions and thoughts that come up that I didn't realize were there. And it's things that I need to process. Like someone
Mhm.
said this thing and it actually hurt. And my body's been carrying that all week. And I need to have a cry and I need to feel that disappointment. And then I get to move on.
Mm.
Whereas when I'm constantly distracted by my phone, I don't pay attention to my emotions. So,
Mm.
um, and I do this, I'm very disciplined, and I didn't do this that much when I was studying because things just go
Yeah,
out the
it's
window.
hard to add anything to your plate when you're sick. It's like that's when it's most important to like be controlling your diet and controlling your sleep and controlling your exercise. Like is the sicker you are, the more important those things are, and the more impossible they are to add to your
Yeah.
life. You know, like it's like how, how do you expect me to add any kind of life changer? I'm just trying to survive. You know,
Yeah.
um, yeah, that's so I get that for sure.
But at the same time, like what you're saying, if I had a partner, for example, that got home at 8 p.m., I don't know if I would do that. I might adjust my schedule, but then, like, for example, you have kids, so it's not like you can go to bed at 1 a.m. and then wake up
I
later.
know. That's what we used to do, and it would work fine, right? I would just sleep. And honestly, I have to say, there are days because sleep is so important, and I can't really just operate on minimal sleep where we'll stay up late, and I'll need sleep the next morning. Like I need additional sleep, and I'll sleep till 10 a.m. And I can do that because I have an amazing husband who will get up with the kids when they wake up at 7 a.m. He's one of those like crazy people who needs like 5 hours of sleep and he's totally fine. He's like, yeah, I don't ever need sleep. I'm the opposite. And he'll get up with them and almost every morning he makes some chocolate chip pancakes and they'll play games
Wow.
and he lets me sleep and does all the morning activities with the kids. And it's frustrating because like I hate that I miss out on that, but also I know it's such a blessing to have that kind of support. I know
Yeah.
that's support that not everyone has available to them, you know? So
Yeah.
I have to admit like that's not all like me. And I don't know, people, especially when you run a business, you know, people are like, oh, look, you're a superwoman. Look at all these things you did. It's like, there's no way that I possibly started or operated or managed all these businesses in my own power. You know, it's
Yeah.
because of the support of my husband and my family and the community. You know, it's like because I built a support team and learned, this was the hardest thing, learned to ask for help when I needed it.
Yeah.
Um, that I've been able to be successful. You know, it's like because I have my mom who I can be like, hey, can you watch the kids? Or I can get the extra
Yeah.
sleep I need in the morning because of my husband. You know, things like that I really think shouldn't be discounted. You know, they're a huge part of being successful in business. You know, you need a support team.
Yeah, and I think you bring up a good point because I think it's doable. I think maybe a lot of spoonies would look at running a business or whatever and say, I don't know if I could do that. But I think you, at least for me, I reached a certain point with my chronic illness where I was ready to communicate my needs and I was ready to delegate and I was also very self-aware. So I think not that everyone has to be at that point when they start a business, but that would be my suggestion is get to a point where you have those three components, because that's what's been really helpful for me. Because I'm the same. I wouldn't be able to be doing this if I didn't have help, if I didn't have an amazing team, great support network.
Right.
And that's so important. And you know, people are like, oh my gosh, look at everything you're doing. And I'm like, every time I'm always like, it's actually my team. Like, I'm doing a lot, but I cannot tell you enough how amazing my team is and how thankful I am for them.
Right. Yeah. Because none of the things that I've accomplished or achieved or anything have been something that I can, you know, claim to my name on my own. You know, it's like it was my idea, and like good for me for like having the guts to go for it, and like that's where it stops. You know, and after that, it was my support and my team and the people that came in and my employees and my family, and you know, honestly the community that came around and made these things possible. You know, like none of this is me just like grinding away making it happen. You know, it's like I that's not something I have the energy or health for right now. And I do work hard. Like I definitely work hard, and I know you work hard. But I think being grateful for your team is so necessary because they deserve so much credit. You know, without my team, without my support system, none of it's really possible. You know, like you have to have that network. And I know not everyone has the family support local. Like I that's definitely something I'm really blessed with. But I think that whether you have family around or, you know, a spouse who's supportive or any of that, I think you can still find a support team.
Yeah, for sure.
Even if it's not one that's naturally part of your life, right? Either from, you know, local groups that of people, you know, like you, or getting involved with things like your Chamber of Commerce is something we can do around here. Or for me, a mom's group is where I found a lot of connections. Wherever it is, I think you can find and build a support team over time. And I think part of it's also being their support when you're able to also, you know?
Yeah, totally.
So
So I just want to switch gears a tiny bit because part of the reason why we connected is through your Instagram profile, Corra.health. And Corra.health is actually your latest business that you're working on where you're building an app to help the community. Can you tell me about that?
Sure. So, like I said before, this is the business that definitely is the most nerve-wracking for me because I feel like there's so much writing on it. Kind of the story behind it is, as I've said, I've tried pretty much every nutrition regimen out there. I don't like calling them diets because at this point, like that word just sets me off. So I call them nutrition plans, nutrition regimens. You know, my focus is nutrition, not dieting. And so I've tried it all, you know, Whole30, pescatarian, vegetarian, vegan, paleo. I mean, there's also some others that are even weirder, but I've tried it all. And one of the reasons that I got to the lowest point where it's kind of personal, but I, throughout my journey of getting sicker, the more the mobility I lacked, the more sedentary I became, obviously, and I started getting chronic UTIs where essentially I just had a UTI forever. I was put on daily antibiotics, full strength antibiotics I had to take every single day, and my doctors were like, probably indefinitely. We like, and that's when I really started realizing that there's almost no research or data on on women and UTIs and how to overcome it and what to do. And I was like, there's got to be something I can shift in my diet or in my nutrition. There I go. I said the word anyway. With my nutrition that could really somehow help my body get ahead. Because at this point now I'm on antibiotics every day. I've been on antibiotics every day for almost a year. And my system is thrashed from it. And even getting off antibiotics, even if I don't have an active infection, I'm now at risk because now all the good bacteria is also gone, right? Like I'm in a really, my body doesn't handle it well. Like nothing is going well. Like there's got to be a way with nutrition that I can reduce this. Now, this is a whole topic for another time. So I'm going to kind of curb this. I have so much to say on this topic specifically, but essentially after kind of using myself as an experiment of like, okay, well, like I'm going to basically eat nothing but the blandest diet I can think of. I'm going to do chicken, rice, and zucchini, and that is it. I'm having that for breakfast, for lunch, for dinner, nothing else. And then every 4 days, I will introduce one new food, tomatoes, or actually I already knew tomatoes were a flare, but whatever it was, potatoes or this or that. And if I had a flare within the next couple days after introducing my new food, then I would know, okay, that food's not good for me, And I had to be this meticulous about it because every single person, every single body is unique. And there's not going to be one nutrition plan that's working for everyone. Like if everyone just does pescatarian, you're cured. It's like, no, a lot of us are fighting these incurable illnesses and we're trying to find the right nutrition plan for us. And what works for me is not necessarily going to work for you or for the next person or for the person across the street, right? It's like, we are all unique people, and how our body responds to food is different, and how it responds to medication or supplements or exercise or any of this is completely different. And I was like, there's got to be a way where I can not only track this, because at this point I've tried every app, none of them are good enough. I'm tracking all of this by hand. I'm like highlighting things and drawing lines and flipping back weeks and months of data. I'm like literally tracking this for years. And I was like, there has got to be a way to make this easier. And I was like, I need an app where I can track everything, track all my data, and ideally have some kind of smart software, an AI that could look at all of it and be like, hey, we notice every time you have tomatoes, you report nausea for 2 days. We notice every time you take this medication that your headaches go away and you suddenly have stomach pains. We notice that every time you exercise for an hour or more per day, you sleep better at night. Like not causation, not telling you these things are happening, just like, hey, these things come up together. We notice tomatoes and nausea. We notice exercise and better sleep. We notice, right? Like, and again, it'll be different for every person. Like the whole idea of this app is that it's customized for that person, right? It's not like a whole database of like, well, we see other people with EDS have these experiences. Like it doesn't matter. Everyone with EDS, with fibromyalgia, with Crohn's, with lupus, with all these conditions have a unique experience, even from others in that community. Like, yes, there's going to be some generalities that are more similar with these patients, but the more we can individualize it per person, hopefully the more answers each person can get for themselves and then kind of identify the best lifestyle for them. So I needed this app because I was losing my mind dealing with these infections constantly. I'm still battling it, but I'm finally on my way out of this through nutrition. It's like, I'm gonna, you know what? This app doesn't exist. I'm going to make it. I'm going to make an app that meets my needs and ideally the needs of the entire chronic illness community, and then those who are just wanting to improve their health, can be health nuts or fitness gurus or whoever, like maybe they want to know which pre-workout works best for their body. I just want it to be for people, especially the chronic illness community, and just be a support where you can basically like a diary of your life where you can track whatever you want or don't want, and then have an easy PDF you can share with your doctor so you don't have to remember what you wanted to tell your doctor, or like, oh, so how were you feeling on that medication 3 weeks ago? Like, I don't know. Like, how am I supposed to remember that? Right. And now I can just look it up, be like, oh, I was feeling like this, so not only will it hopefully be an incredible health tracker or health log, but it will also have a correlation software, which will get better over time. Obviously, the launch we have here coming in January is phase 1. But over time, we're going to be able to improve this correlation. So everyone bear with us the first few months. We need everyone's support so that we can keep making these improvements.
Is that
But
why you've called it Corra?
yeah, Corra, because it's correlations.
Correlation. I love that. I didn't
Yeah.
even think of that.
It's kind of my AI software name, so it'll be like Corra has
Yeah.
identified that, kind of like Alexa or Siri or something,
This is brilliant. I actually love this. There's a couple of reasons why I love this and why I wanted to get you on the podcast. One, because I just want to share with the community. You're doing some beta testing that people can sign up for if they're keen. So for those listening, you can go on your website. We'll post it up on our show notes and everything.
First round of beta testing is December 10th. I'm sure we'll do another for the pre-launch, but December 10th is our first one that the more users we can get, the better.
Yeah. And they can also sign up. I'm sure you have a newsletter. They can follow you on Instagram and just stay updated with
the group for everyone to kind of just talk and support one another. So yeah.
I love that. And so I love this because one of my passions, I'm studying IT, and one of my passions is using technology to solve problems. And it's, it's something I've been wanting to do to get into med tech and all of that. And we were thinking about building an app for chronic cope at some stage, but haven't, and I'm happy with that decision. But I'm
just gonna throw that out there.
We'll see what happens. It's not the priority.
Right.
Working on some other projects at the moment. But yeah, just using technology because it has so much untapped potential. And I think one of the things that I have, even with studying, we had to develop a health tech software that helped people manage their symptoms remotely. We didn't develop it, we created a plan for it. And what I realized in doing that is there's a lot of legislation around using people's health information, et cetera, et cetera.
A lot of privacy laws. So you have to be really careful about anonymizing information so that it can't be tracked back to people, because you want to protect people in that too, Yeah.
So it's a whole thing. And I think there's some barriers to med tech and all of that sort of thing, but I love that what you're doing is I really believe it's going to help the community, and would love to support you in any way we can.
Yeah, I'm really excited. The pre-launch is going to be here in January, so people will be able to download it by then. The goal is that it'll have connections with Fitbit and Apple Health and MyFitnessPal.
Wow.
Because I don't want to reinvent the wheel. It's like these things already exist. They already help people. I would rather be able to just take information in from them instead of try to recreate something myself. These are already amazing apps. And I don't want to undo kind of what everyone's already tracking there. That won't be connected January 1st. We're hoping to have Fitbit and Apple Health connected by February 1st. MyFitnessPal, we're still waiting on. They don't give licensing out to very many people, so they haven't really gotten back to us. They said if they decide to give the license out to more people, they might let us know. And at that point, we'll hopefully get that connected down the road. But it's a kind of step-by-step process. And the more users we have who are willing to, download the app. There is a small fee. We're trying to keep it as minimal as possible because I don't want it to be something that people can't access, but I need it to be something, it costs a lot of money to actually store the data for each individual user, especially keeping it fully anonymized and stuff. So the more people we can get to download the app and support it while it's still kind of growing and improving and in kind of its rough draft state, the more we'll be able to enhance it and improve it faster, and really make it something that can support the whole community, and uplift people, so that's the goal. Is just, if you're interested in being a beta tester, there's obviously going to be incentives for beta testers also. That data will be used to help kind of make the AI software, the correlation software, enhance it and really make it more accurate for people. And again, over time, it'll get better and better. But then just downloading the app January and continuing with it January, February, March, and really giving us time to improve it for you. And you'll get to see those improvements, oh, look, this is connected now. Oh, look, right. There's a couple pages I'm really excited about, which won't be active until February and then March. But again, it's you're going to kind of get each month you'll be like, ooh, a new thing, like
Yeah,
it'll be
exactly. No, and that's how so many things start as well.
right.
And so like I love what you're doing, just in the sense of like helping the community. And also it feels good knowing that it's someone from the community that's trying to, because I mean,
Yeah.
I think
Yeah. It's like I'm using this app too, Yeah.
you're doing it, you saw a problem, you're solving it, it's a problem that affects you. And I think that at least for me, knowing that it's like you're not here to like make money, or obviously you want to like pay the bills and
Like, I'm
all of
hoping
that.
it will support my family eventually. Like, I'll be
Yes,
honest.
exactly.
Hopefully this will be a nice income for us eventually, but that's not the motivation behind it. The
The
motivation is
motivation behind it is to
to
help.
help me and help others, right? It's to, like improving my own health or helping me get off antibiotics completely is
Yeah.
payment enough, right? Like that alone is life changing for me. And if it can change my life with a chronic illness, hopefully it can also change others, So
I love that.
yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
stay tuned, those listening, for the amazing app. Again, beta testing closes on December 10th. So for those listening, sign up via your website. We'll have it in the show notes, and get on board because this is going to be awesome.
Yeah.
And
I'm really excited. I'm like super nervous and super excited.
Yeah.
And this is a whole new, like, I'm not a tech person, so this is a whole new world for me.
Yeah, well, welcome. It's fun.
Thank you.
To finish up, I just wanted to see, we kind of asked this of everyone, if you have any recommendations of like podcasts, TV shows, books, anything that has kind of worked for you on your journey, or anything you're just kind of into at the moment.
Sure. So one book I actually really loved that I'm going to throw out there is The Healing Self. I just find it absolutely fascinating. I have like the author's name here. It's The Healing Self is by MD Deepak Chopra and Rudolph E. Tanzi. And hopefully I didn't butcher those names, but they're incredible. I did my best.
Good. We'll put it in the show notes as
right,
well.
Exactly. But the book is really just, it talks about the power of our brain. And it just has some phenomenal studies in it. And I just found it so incredible. And I've loved that for my own health journey, and just because I found it interesting. And we talked a lot about business and delegating and things like that. So some business books that really supported me or really impacted me are Entree Leadership by Dave Ramsey. It's about being an entrepreneurial leader. He created this word. This book was incredible. And he talks a lot about delegating in that book. I like pretty much anything Simon Sinek, his talks, his books, everything I find really powerful. For my employees, when I was running the tutoring center, every single employee we got, I would buy them the book that he wrote called Start With Why. Because even if you're not doing business, like even if you don't do business, I think it helps you just kind of find your mantra for life. Like what are you about? What is important to you? And not only obviously do I think that is very important and impactful for a business owner or an entrepreneur, but I just think as a person, like you don't even have to be interested in business for this book to be impactful. So I would buy the Start With Why and then the Find Your Why handbook that goes with it for every single employee I have. It's probably the number one book I'd recommend to everybody. And the last book I'd recommend is Thinking Fast and Slow. I find it really incredible. It's about, that one's by Daniel Kahneman. And it talks about kind of your impulses, kind of the two parts of your brain, the two ways you think, which is like subconsciously or your like active thinking, and how that can trick you, and statistics. I don't know. I find it very, very interesting. So those are kind of the books. I do a lot of audiobooks. TV, I pretty much watch anything crime related. I love crime shows. My favorite show in the whole world is Rizzoli and Isles. It's about a cop and her best friend who's the medical examiner, and it's my favorite TV show.
I love that.
I show it to everyone. So
awesome.
Yeah. That
well, thanks for
the books
sharing.
though is really where I'd want to focus.
Yeah. No, those are some good ideas even for me. I'm super keen to read those.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for your time coming on the podcast. Time flew by. We've been chatting for like an hour. Yeah, so just thanks. And again, like so excited about your app, and we will do what we can to get the word out there and support you.
Thanks. Yeah, I can't wait to learn more about Chronic Hope and hopefully have a long-lasting relationship here. So I really
Yeah,
appreciate you guys bringing
totally.
me on.
Yeah,
Cool.
absolutely. Thanks.
Awesome. Thanks.
Bye.